What's up, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and inbreds and idiots alike? So, I want to talk to you about something, but you need to pay attention because, quite frankly, all these stupid people that I keep interacting with are just getting old. We don't seem to have any shortage of idiots. Maybe that's from all the inbreeding. Anyways, so I have a few things to share with you, but before I do that, I wanted to make some clarifications as well. One of my last recordings where I was talking about the um, DEW weapons, the LRAD, and so forth, and these types of technologies that are used by police departments and municipalities throughout the country, as well as the military, were originally developed for military uses. When I was mentioning about those types of devices in my experience and being targeted, I wasn't so much referring to being targeted by the technology or someone using the technology to necessarily target me, although that is plausible. It's always possible. Um, what I was referring to mostly about being targeted was after I began filing the complaints about the audible noise coming from the local area businesses such as Casting Solutions or the Stave Company. When making those complaints, the reason that I felt targeted was because of the fact that my complaints were being ignored. The real physical noise that I was able to record, though it may not be as good as quality as some of you might like, but frankly, I don't care. I did the best with what I had at the time. But nonetheless, the noise is present in the recordings, as well as it was definitely noticeable in person. As a matter of fact, quote unquote in person. As a matter of fact, there was a an officer when this all started up back in 2018, Sergeant Barnes. I'm not sure of his first name. He was a veteran as well. I believe he served in the Army, if I'm not mistaken. He was with the Zanesville Police Department there at the beginning of all of this, and he was one of the first sergeants to come out to the property when I first began dealing with all of this. And one of the first things that he said when he walked in the door was, "What is that noise?" And he kind of grabbed his head and his ears, and he had a lot of pressure build up in his head all of a sudden in his ears. And ironically, shortly thereafter, he disappeared. I don't know where the hell he went to. I heard some rumors that he might have gotten fired or transferred out of the Zanesville Police Department or resigned, maybe. I'm not sure 100% what happened to him. But if any of you know of this Sergeant Barnes, I would be interested if you could, maybe let me know if you have any idea where he's at, if he's working for another police agency. I don't know if he would necessarily remember that incident, but that was one thing that I recall is Sergeant Barnes, when he came to the property, he was one of the only officers that not only could hear and feel what I was hearing and feeling at the house there, but also he could hear the noise coming from the local area businesses. And I suspected that because of the fact that he identified with me as far as being able to hear or feel or sense the sounds that I was talking about, maybe that's why he was maybe forced to resign, or maybe that's how he was let go from the police department. I'm not 100% sure. It's just a speculation or suspicion. But at any rate, about the targeting, like I said, because of the fact that they weren't addressing the actual noise, and instead they were attacking me and doing everything they could to disparage my character, destroy my credibility. Um, that's part of the reason why I felt targeted, because they weren't following the quote unquote law. They weren't following their own codes and regulations and policies. They weren't doing proper investigations. And by not doing that and choosing to come after me in the manner that they did, by putting guns in my face multiple times and threatening my life because I'm calling and complaining about noise. I mean, technically that's witness tampering, among other things. But anyways, so I just wanted to bring that up about the targeting. That's what I was referring to. By the way that they handled the situation, I felt targeted because they weren't paying attention to the proper aspects of what I was complaining about. Instead, they were at every turn trying to disparage my character and try to make it sound like I was hearing things that weren't there. Now, just because they can't hear them doesn't mean that it's not there. But I guess that's how inbred these people are from Zanesville, is they can't quite comprehend ideas like that, where some people may be more susceptible to these sorts of things, or for whatever reason, some people may be able to hear it, whereas others aren't. Maybe they are just that stupid that they haven't used hearing protection, and maybe their hearing is just that screwed up that they can't hear some of these sounds because their hearing is bad or something to that effect. I mean, who knows? But regardless, I should have been able to find somebody along the way besides Sergeant Barnes, which, like I said, he conveniently disappeared, to be able to pay attention to what was going on. So aside from that, I want to share with you guys a couple of recordings. In fact, this first recording here I came across on YouTube. This is a motor that's being started up, an electric motor, that has harmonic noise present. And what it's from is it's from the electrical circuit that's powering the motor that the harmonic frequencies are coming from, also known as dirty electricity. And as it plays, you will be able to hear the motor start up, and as it starts powering up and the RPMs get higher and higher, at a certain point, you'll start to hear the frequencies start to promulgate from the motor, because the motor isn't designed to handle these types of frequencies. It doesn't have a proper filter. The only way that it can disperse these frequencies is to essentially create an audible sound inside of the motor itself. The components, parts of the components themselves may be vibrating because of the frequencies causing that physical sound. Things like transformers and stuff like that. If you've ever heard a transformer, I'd say like an air conditioner, when it starts going out, it starts making a buzzing noise. Or if there's harmonics present, if there's dirty electricity present, it can cause the transformers and the motors to make some extra noises as well. So I'm going to play this for you. The clip, I'll put the links in the description so you can go and watch the videos yourself and hear the audio. You can actually see the video presentation with the audio. I'm just going to play the audio for you. This one's about 12 minutes long, but I'm only going to play the first couple minutes or so, because once it gets up to speed, it's about 9 or 10 minutes of just screaming noise from this motor, which you'll hear here in just a second. So just bear with me. So for reference, this audio that I'm going to be playing is from the video posted to the YouTube channel titled Dan Earnest. It's 2 words, Dan like the name, D-A-N, space, the word Earnest, E-A-R-N-E-S-T. Only the first letter is capitalized of each word, and it's 2 separate words. And the title of the posting, the video posting, is Motor with Harmonic Noise. So I'm going to go ahead and play here for now. I'm going to go ahead and stop that there. That's just about the first minute and a half, minute 15 seconds or so of this particular video. The rest of it is just that same noise of the motor running for the next 10 minutes roughly, which it's a little painful for me to listen to. But at any rate, if you listen to that, if you want to rewind it back to the beginning of that and re-listen to it, or if you want to click the link in the description to the motor with harmonic noise link, it'll take you to this video posting, and you can watch the video and you can listen to the whole thing yourself. But what I want you to pay attention to is that stepping sound of the noise of the motor, where it changes the pitch and the tone as it's powering up and as it's working through these harmonic frequencies and promulgating these harmonic frequencies as they work their way through the electrical circuit. And let me just back it up again, and I'll play that little clip for you again. So here we go. So you can hear the motors powering up. Right there. You hear those steps. Where it almost sounds like an instrument, somebody doing a scales on a guitar or a piano or something like that, slowly. It's that step motion of the different frequency sounds, if you will. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because this is very similar to, and I'll play for you here in just a minute, a recording that I took from the property there in Zanesville, or on Zanesville, excuse me, and I'm using a program here. Let me get you the name of the program. You might want to go download the application rather, so that way you're able to utilize this same application, and you can do some of your own testing to see if you have some of these same type of exposures wherever you are. Let's see, should be right here. There it is. So the title of the application, it's Spectrum RTA. So Spectrum space RTA. RTA is all capital letters. The word spectrum is just the first letters capitalized, and the rest are lowercase. So Spectrum RTA hyphen audio analyzing. And the creator of this application is shown as Leonid Arefev. That's spelled capital L, lowercase EONID, space, capital A, lowercase REFEV. Now, if you go to Google Play or any of the app stores, I know it's on Google Play. I'm not sure about all of the different app stores. I'm not sure if it's available for Apple. But at any rate, let's see here. So the second video, what I've got is the testing that I did at the property there on Zanesville. Now keep in mind, when I did this recording, so I took the recording in the center of the house in the downstairs. The house is about 5,200 square feet in total. It's 2 stories. Each story or each level is about 2,700 square feet. And in the center of the house, there's a center room. It's a safe room. It's all concrete and block. Concrete ceiling, concrete floor, block walls all the way around, and it has a steel old-fashioned safe door that I had closed during this recording. Now keep in mind also that I had all of the power off. I don't recall if this was before or after I had the electric service removed from the property. However, I do know for a fact that all of the power was off. So it was either shut off at the main breaker for the house, where the main supply comes in, or, like I said, this may have been after I had the drop line and the meter removed from the property, so there was no physical connection to the grid whatsoever. Again, I can't remember at what point this recording was taken, whether it was before or after that disconnection. But at any rate, there was no electricity flowing through the house, through the structure, through the walls. So everything that I had picked up could only have been coming from the power lines that were that ran parallel to the property. It's about a half an acre or so of property, just I think either just over or just under. I can't remember off the top of my head, but where the position is, I took this recording, is about 50 or 60 feet away from the base of the power poles where the power lines are located. And from the level of the house, it's about another 8 feet or so up. There's a wall in front of the house where it goes up, where the poles are located. And then, of course, to the top of the poles is where the power lines are. So it's a little bit different setup than a typical neighborhood that's flat, where the houses might be a little bit closer in proximity to the power lines. But at any rate, so I just want to kind of give you an idea of the setup and where I was at in relation. So again, this is inside of a completely concrete and block room in the center of the house, with no electricity flowing through the house. And I'm using this Spectrum RTA audio analyzing application. And I was, this is the first test run that I was doing with it to try to pick up some of these sounds. And this is essentially what I found. It's about 10 minutes long or so. I'm not sure if I'm going to play the entire clip, but again, I'll put the link in the description. You're more than welcome to go check out that other channel. And there's some other videos on that channel as well, some other testing that I had done. It's not all of the testing, keep in mind. It's just some of the testing that I did that I was able to record with a device that was not connected to the internet or not connected to any wireless signals, so it wouldn't interfere with the testing devices. So I just have a little bit of the testing recorded there, but you're more than welcome to go check that out. And again, just like this channel here, Exhibited Meat, the other channel that I have these recordings at, none of it's monetized. So I don't get paid for the views or nothing like that. So it's just for educational purposes. So here is what I've recorded at the property, which once you hear it, think about it and consider if it sounds similar to the first clip that I played. So here it goes. Now there is a little bit of a silent moment here. There'll be silent moments where I am recording with a device, and then you'll hear a click, and that's where I'm turning on an inverter that's hooked up to a battery that powers a little tiny sound system that I was using to replay the sound. But I had to turn it all off so that way that system wouldn't interfere with the recording. So you'll hear me turning it on and off. You'll hear the clicks. And then you'll hear me play back the sounds that's recorded. So just keep that in mind. Also, at first, the first couple of recordings or so, the volume on the device was down. So when I replayed the recordings, it comes across a little faint. It's a little hard to hear at first. But at some point through the recording, I adjust the volume and it comes through, and it's so loud, unfortunately, that it starts to distort the speakers. But you'll be able to hear that. So here I'm taking a recording. And then you'll hear the click of the switch. That's the inverter turning on. And here I'm going to play the recording. Okay, and there you can hear the inverter being shut off, so it's not interfering. I'm going to record again. I don't know how well that's coming through on this new recording, but just bear with me here. Like I said, here in just a minute or so, I'm going to adjust the volume so it'll definitely be a lot louder where you can hear a lot more clearly. So again, here I'm taking a recording, switch the system back on to replay, and now I'm going to replay the sound. And again, I'm not sure how well it's coming through on the recording. It's really faint at this point in the recorded posting on that other YouTube channel. Because I had the volume down, I didn't realize the volume was down on the device until after a couple of recordings. But again, just bear with me. It's somewhat eerie too when I'm listening to these recordings played back, because the sounds, they remind me of that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Some of these tones that are coming off, they remind me of that movie, if you're familiar with it. Okay, now there you can hear it's extremely distorted. I turned the volume up. In the background you can hear that kind of raspy, rattling rumble noise. And what I found is that that's actually very similar to what I hear, this low frequency noise. Unfortunately, I didn't have a graphic equalizer to be able to adjust some of the frequency bands to prevent the distortion. But I didn't want to manipulate it too much. I just wanted a raw recording, so that way I could capture what's there rather than trying to manipulate it and adjust it to make it sound better, if you will. I just wanted it to represent what's there. So just keep that in mind. So you've got in the background that rumble noise. It's I'm pretty sure that's what I hear, that rumbling sound. It's essentially a 60 cycles per second sine wave oscillation that I hear. That's what I matched to using a frequency generator. And when there's not so much distortion from the volume, it'll match. It'll sound just like that low frequency oscillation or rolling sound where it comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes. And then of course you also could hear the harmonic tones that the device is picking up that, like I mentioned, sound similar to the sounds from that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But you can hear the different changes, just like in that the recording of the motor where it played, and you could hear the different steps of the different pitches and tones of the different frequencies promulgating through the motor. This is very similar. It's not identical, but it's very similar, where the cadence of the changing of the sounds is very similar, though it's not as consecutive, where it seemed like in that recording of the motor, it was almost like a scale being played up the scale or down the scale, whichever. I'm not entirely sure, but it seemed to be a little bit more, I don't know if organized is the right word, but the cadence is definitely very similar when you listen to those higher pitched tones and how they change and constantly change. So here it is again. And there you can hear the system. I turned the system off. There's a switch. And I'm recording again. And when you go to the link in the description and watch this video, you'll see you can actually see the screen of the analyzer and the bands and frequencies that it's picking up and the distortion. And I think at one point when I go to replay the recording, I think I forgot to turn the speaker system back on. So there was, at one point, I think I played it and it was silent, so there might be a little bit of a silence here. Yeah, this is where it is. I went to do a second recording. And there's the speaker system being turned back on. And here I'm playing the new recording. Now, I want you to keep in mind that not only this particular application with this device, but other test devices that I've had, as well as other devices with different applications that I used as far as spectrum analyzers made by different creators, they all pretty much picked up the same thing. This one was a little bit different as far as it actually played back the sounds very clearly, and it could record them and play them back, whereas the other ones, it would just record the video, the visualization on the screen. It wouldn't necessarily play back the sound that the analyzer was picking up. It would just show the levels going up and down on the screen. So that was one of the reasons why I tried this application out, was because it would actually record and play back the sound that it had picked up and recorded. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, again, I'm going to put the links in the description. Let's see, there's a couple more minutes left here. I'm going to play a little bit more of this recording. I think here I'm adjusting the volume again, so it's not quite so distorted. And I'm going to play it again here. And again, it's kind of finicky. Trying to figure out the proper volume level to have the device at for the recording and the playback was a little tricky because it seemed like just a little adjustment on the volume bar would cause a lot of distortion and that background noise and that humming, rumbling noise that I've been talking about. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and pull that down. Let's see if I got... Yeah, that's really one of the only decent audio recordings I have with that application posted to this channel. But by all means, go check out that second channel. I haven't posted to that channel in a while. I just set it up to be able to record and post some of the testing that I was doing at that property to try to get some evidence as far as the exposures and what specific frequencies I was able to pick up and that I was being exposed to. And one interesting thing you'll see there on that channel, there's another posting. Let's see. Well, before I get to that, let me tell you. So on this channel, it's titled Brandon Killeran. That's the title of the channel. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. And let's see. So again, first letter is capitalized. The rest are lowercase. It's BRANDON space KILLORAN. And the title of that recording that I just played is First Test Run with New App in Safe Room with the Power Shut Off Completely to the House. And that was done approximately February 24th of 2020. So if I remember correctly, I think that I had the electrical drop line, the service line, disconnected and with the meter removed around April, towards the end of April of 2020. So this would be right before having the service disconnected. However, I did have the main breaker that delivers the electricity into the house shut off. So there was only electricity coming from the power lines to the drop line to the meter, but that's where it stopped because I shut the main breaker off. There was no electricity flowing through the house whatsoever. So definitely keep that in mind. So this is all coming from the power lines. If you go to that other channel, titled Brandon Killeran, like I said, there's a couple of other videos there that you can see, some other testing that I did. There is also some testing that I did with some other devices that you'll be able to see. Not all of them have audio, at least anything worth listening to. Some of them it's just a little bit of background noise, but it's just the visual recording to record the readings that the devices are giving as I'm doing the scanning or the sweep. So there's, let's see, about a half a dozen or so, 6 or 7 recordings. It looks like about six recordings there. Looks like I did 3 with the spectrum analyzer, and then I've got 3 with a electro smog meter, or a trying to think how to describe it. It's a device that essentially tests for electric and magnetic fields, as well as dirty electricity. And it tests for different things like the level of, or the amplitude rather, of electric and magnetic fields, as well as other things. I haven't used the device in a little while, so I'm trying to remember and rack my brain to recall. At any rate, you can go check out the channel. You can look at the videos. Again, this other second channel is not monetized, so I don't get paid for the views. It's just for educational purposes. But if you want to go check that out, you can view the recordings in total. And while you're listening to them, consider if you think, like I do, that the sounds that I was recording in the house with these devices with the power shut off is very similar to the sounds coming off of that electric motor while it was running and while it was powering up, and with the harmonics that were present and emitting from, or emitting a physical sound from the motor as it was powering up. And to me, they sound very similar in the cadence of the switching of the tones and pitches. Although the motor, the sounds from the electric motor definitely seemed a lot more of a consecutive nature, where it was almost like somebody playing a scale from a piano or a guitar, where it seemed to be in succession a lot more than the recordings that I was able to pick up, or the sounds that I was picking up in the recordings. Where in my recordings, it seemed like the pitches and tones were kind of all over the place. It would jump back and forth from a higher tone to a lower tone. And then, of course, in the instance where I had the volume turned up a little bit too high, you could hear that distortion in the background, that low frequency rumble or hum coming through the subwoofer that was so intense that it was causing the subwoofer to distort. And that's what the crackling was from. It was from the noise overpowering the subwoofer and causing the subwoofer to distort. So again, I'm going to put these links in the description. But these are the things, when I talk about these effects, these biological effects that I've been experiencing, these are the reasons why I've said what I've said, as far as why I highly suspect that the screeching noise and the low rumble noise that I hear in my ears, predominantly the left side, this is why I very strongly suspect that it's coming from the power lines, the exposure from the power lines, the electric and magnetic fields, coupled with the harmonics coming off of the power lines, and that exposure could be causing these types of biological effects. Now, if you do some research, if you look up some published research on NIH.gov by credible researchers and doctors, scientists, and so forth, medical personnel, you'll see in their research that especially things, exposure to things like 2.4 gigahertz or even harmonics. They talk about harmonics and if I remember correctly, I think it was in there that I read about exposure to triplins. Triplins is a term where if there's a certain combination of harmonics that when coupled together and the body is exposed to them, they can cause a lot of different types of health problems potentially. They've been known to, anyways, in people with some testing. And though it's not 100% conclusive as far as what all of the effects may be, there's enough evidence to show that the exposure can lead to biological effects of one shape, form, or another. You can also look into the effects of radiofrequency radiation on the body. And there's a good article on EPA.gov, unless they scrubbed it off the internet. It used to be up there. It was electric and magnetic fields from power lines. Essentially, I can't remember if that was the exact term verbatim. It was something to that effect. It might have been health effects from electric and magnetic fields from power lines, but essentially, if you just look up EPA.gov, electric and magnetic fields and power lines, it should pull up the article. It may even pull up some of the research from NIH.gov that was published there regarding the same type of exposure. And there may even be new research that I'm not aware of that's been posted there recently that you might be able to take a look at and consider yourself. So if you want to be a skeptic, if you want to think that I don't know what I'm talking about, if you want to be like these providers with the VA or in the community or these public servants that instead of paying attention and giving people the benefit of the doubt and giving a little bit of credit where credit is due, instead they seem to let the power go to their head, and instead of being cooperative, they seem to want to attack and force their will on people like me, which seems detrimental to the situation because, like I said before, I don't know which is worse, the effects of the exposure that I'm having to deal with on a daily basis, and especially it was even worse back then, or I don't know if that's worse, or dealing with these out-of-control public servants that simply don't care about reality. They just want to force their will on people, which is completely against the law, which is completely in bad faith, which doesn't qualify them for qualified immunity. It actually disqualifies them according to the codes, where it talks about in the Ohio Revised Code about qualified immunity. It says specifically that bad faith actions are not covered under qualified immunity. So therefore, when they're acting in bad faith and they're not held accountable, it can only be nepotism because of the fact that the prosecutors and DAs and these attorneys, they're all in cahoots. The prosecutors and the officers and the deputies, they're all considered law enforcement officers. So they're all part of the same gang, if you will. So it's not that too far-fetched to realize that the prosecutor is not going to bite the hand that feeds them. Because after all, it's the police officers and the deputies going out and writing tickets and arresting people and charging people with crimes, no matter how frivolous, that are feeding these prosecutors so they can create this record in the court and maybe set a precedent to overthrow established law, even if it conflicts with the general laws. Like I talked about in one of my previous recordings, where it refers to the idea of the home rule state and what it's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do. And here's just another example where, just like where the bad faith actions they're not actually covered under the qualified immunity clause or code, the home rule status or state doesn't allow for the municipality to create laws that conflict with the general laws that are already established. So, but apparently these people, these public servants, mayors and judges and law enforcement officers, apparently, even though they take an oath, they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution and to support the Constitution and to abide by it, for some reason, not only do they not know it, many of them can't even tell you what it says, even though they've been in law enforcement for 20 years or whatever. they don't pay attention. They're not forced to learn this stuff because they don't care. They don't get paid to know the Constitution and to abide by it. They get paid to make money for the city. And that's exactly what the law enforcement does, the police departments. They're writing frivolous traffic infractions and granted, okay, they might actually hold some quote unquote criminals accountable for bad deeds and for creating loss, injury, or harm in other people's lives or their property. But an overwhelming majority of what these police officers do, in my experience and from my firsthand account, is they ignore their duties and obligations. They ignore their oaths of office. They ignore it all. They ignore the Constitution, which they swore an oath to uphold and to abide by and to support. And out of their ignorance, because they're not held accountable, especially in this type of a situation with the home rule state, as you've probably heard, the Attorney General's office said, well, it's either a private matter or it's up to the Department of Justice and the FBI, the federal government, because of this setup. So there is no accountability. So what incentive do they have to actually follow the Constitution? What incentive do they have to be aware and cognizant of my rights, my God-given rights, that are secured by the Constitution, that are identified and secured by the Constitution, not given, not granted, but just identified as a boundary for them? It's supposed to tell them what they can and can't do. But again, they conveniently ignore that. And the only reason they do that is because there's no accountability. They have no incentive to learn it. They have no incentive to know it. And they have no incentive to abide by it. Because their superiors apparently, praise them for any kind of debauchery. Even in the situation that I dealt with, where there was very real physical noise, anybody there on the scene live would be able to hear the noise. It's very loud, whether it's coming from the stave company or Casting Solutions or whatever other sources were out there making noise at night that was disturbing. They could hear it firsthand, just like I could. In fact, when they would come out to the property, when I would file the complaints for them to investigate, they would come out to the property. They would have a conversation with me. They would, agree. Oh yeah, that's really loud. That's really loud. I can't. That's crazy loud and everything else. But then they would go back to the department and write up a report and say they didn't hear anything. So that was a whole nother reason that I felt like I was being targeted, because here they're telling me one thing and they're lying in their report, or they're lying to me. I mean, maybe they're just ignorant and inbred and they're just making shit up, telling me that they can hear it too. I mean, it's hard for me to believe because it's a physical noise. I mean, I use my ears every day. I know the difference between noise that's real and not. And just like in this situation, though at first, when I heard the noise coming from the business operations, as well as this noise that from the effects of the exposure to the power lines, these harmonic noises, at first I thought it was all coming from the same place because it all blended together. This low frequency noise, it sounds like really close to a locomotive idling off in the distance. This low rumble noise, or like a diesel engine off in the distance without the higher pitch rattling noises. It's just a low humming oscillation, much like the sound of of ductwork when an air conditioner is running and the air is flowing through the ductwork. It kind of lets off a little bit of a rumble, especially if it's a larger capacity air conditioner. So the sound is very similar to those types of sounds, that humming rumble noise. If you pull up a frequency generator and input into the frequency generator a 60 hertz sine wave, there's a really good frequency generator. I think it's called Solansky frequency generator, something like that. You can get it online. It's not an app. When I used to use it, it's just a web page that you can go to. They may have an app now. I'm not entirely sure, but At any rate, you can use any frequency generator, plug that in, the 60 hertz sine wave, and then play that back, but you have to play it back through a subwoofer because the smaller speakers are not capable of reproducing that low frequency sound. Only a subwoofer is. So when you play it back through a subwoofer, you'll be able to hear that low frequency oscillation, and it kind of climbs in intensity and then it drops off, and then it climbs in intensity and it drops off, almost like waves crashing on a beach, where it's that ebb and flow or that oscillation sound. It's not just a steady sound that I hear. Now, I would think if it was due to some type of damage or the way that they characterize tinnitus, that if it was a malfunction, say in my inner ear from damage, I would think that it'd be more of a constant, steady sound rather than an oscillation. But because of the fact that there's an oscillation, that tells me that it's a produced sound or it's a produced frequency, because normal sounds, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, like a fan. I have a box fan that I have in my room. Just an inexpensive box fan. One of the ones from Walmart. It's like $10 or something like that. And one thing that I noticed is this particular fan, when I have it running, it sometimes puts off some obnoxious noises as well. Not quite the same as that electric motor, not quite the same as the recordings that I had made in the safe room at the house on Zanesville, but nonetheless, there are times at night when I wake up and the fan's running. It helps to drown out the low frequency sound that I hear, so I don't have to hear it constantly while I'm trying to sleep. But occasionally it does overpower the fan. But aside from that, like I said, this fan sometimes will produce some of these harmonic sounds. And especially in the corners of the room, it seems to be that the sound is a little bit more amplified and maybe even a little bit slightly distorted because of the corners, the 90-degree angles. It's also known as an angle of sorrow. I've noticed in sound rooms too. You'll notice that's why they have the egg crates or the foam padding on the walls to block some of this reverberation. Because in the corners of the rooms where the sounds meet up and bounce off of each other, sometimes they cancel each other out, and sometimes they amplify one another and cause a little bit of a amplification of the sound or a little bit of a distortion. So depending on where I have the fan positioned in the room determines where it's going to throw some of these sounds into which corners and so forth. And so that's one thing that I've noticed as well. And all of this information that I'm sharing with you, coupled together, all of this testing that I've done, along with the research to validate and verify the fact that these types of exposures can cause biological effects and or damage. I'm still not 100% sure if this is actually damage to my hearing or just a biological effect. Now, I strongly suspect that it's just a biological effect because, as I experienced just recently, that we had a power outage, and initially the sound that I hear in my ears didn't go away, but after taking a shower, it did. So when the power was off, the whole neighborhood was out of power. I took a shower, sound went away, but within about 20 or 30 minutes or so, it slowly came back. And so that to me, with that type of disappearance of the sound and then it coming back, as well as when I leave the property, when I leave the house, go for a drive or what have you, the longer that I'm away, the longer it takes for the effects to return when I return back to the property. And so there's been times when it's taken a few hours. If I'm away from the property for a week or 2 weeks or so, and then I return, it may take an hour or two before the effects come back. So it almost seems like it's like a charging up effect. Like it takes a little bit of time for it to get to a level to where it's the effects are noticeable It's not just instant. They don't just instantly come back. Sometimes they do. If I've only been gone, like for example, if I just go to the store, grab something, and come back, generally, uh, the sound that I hear is still present when I get back because I'm not gone for very long. If it does go away in those short trips, then it's only a matter of a couple of minutes before the effects return. So, maybe I didn't share this with you all. I'm pretty sure, matter of fact, I'm certain that I shared it with the public servants, especially Donald Mason and Doug Murray and some of the other incompetent public servants from Zanesville, but they didn't want to pay attention. They didn't really care, and they wanted to play games apparently, and allow me to be dragged through the system by incompetent people like what's his name? The law director from Zanesville, David Tarbert, and the other three incompetent dispatchers. These people, if you will, persons that were false witnesses against me, that admitted to their own negligence, but again, they weren't held accountable. So even acting in bad faith, even under oath, on the stand in their testimony, while I'm cross-examining them, admitting to their negligence, admitting that they ignored reality, so that way they could manipulate the story in the way to get me in trouble, essentially. That was ignored as well, not only by the court, but by the jury and so forth. And here I thought that I could, trust people to pay attention to reality. I mean, I even let them know in a little bit of dissertation that I gave them, or what do you call it, dialogue, where I even asked them if, the entire jury, if they were aware that public servants make mistakes and that's a real thing. And of course, they all kind of laugh and giggle and shake their head, yeah. And, but then when it happens right in front of them, of course, like good little slaves, they do what the court wants them to do. They do what they're getting paid to do, not apparently pay attention to truth and reality. So I want you to consider these things. Feel free to review this recording. Feel free to go to the links in the description of the videos that I played here, the audio from the videos that I played here on this recording. And you can go take a look at the video as well as the audio in those postings and compare them yourself. And you may be aware of other examples of this very same thing. And if you are, feel free to leave a comment. Put a link in the comments if there's other videos that people can go take a look at for further evidence. And if not, that's fine too. And if you want to be a troll, if you want to be a jerk off, and that's all good. It's freedom of speech. But I will warn you that much like Hawkins 2K4 found out very quickly, if you want to be an asshole for no apparent reason, just to disparage me, then you probably won't last long on this platform. So just keep that in mind. It's not a threat. It's not anything like that. I'm just food for thought, something to chew on. But at any rate, like I've said before, you owe it to yourself to know the truth and let the truth set you free. If you don't know the truth and you're not set free, you have no one to blame but yourself.